There we go. Yay. Technology is
Yay.
great when it works for us and with us. So, good evening and welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining and being a part of our dialogues on race for Benton, our beloved community. I'm so excited to have you join us for this third of our community dialogues. And I just want to share a few things before we get started. I probably need to go back to my PowerPoint and go over the points that I wanted to share in that. So I'm going to do that real quick. So our dialogues are designed to bring awareness and understanding about what we know and what we don't know about the experiences of people of color in our community. The goal of the dialogues on race is to tell our story. And the way we can do that is providing much needed opportunities for our community leaders to engage in meaningful conversations with people of color so that they can speak on this complex topic of racism and its impact on our lives and our communities. Today's conversation focuses on our beloved community. Our guiding question is, what is your vision for racial justice for our community? What would it look like if we as a people and as the leaders of organizations and servants of organizations made a commitment to an equitable life for everyone? And if we understood the root causes of inequity and we could identify the ways that we, our schools, our nonprofits, government organizations, and businesses could play a role in building a more equitable community, what would that look like? We use the term our beloved community, a term that was first coined by philosopher and theologian Josiah Royce and later popularized by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who saw the beloved community not as, quote, a lofty utopian goal to be confused with the rapturous image of the peaceable kingdom in which lions and lambs coexist in idyllic harmony. We know that day's coming, but we understand it rather, the beloved community, to be a realistic, achievable goal that can be attained on this side of heaven. In Dr. King's beloved community, racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice are replaced with peace, justice, and an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. Poverty, hunger, and homelessness are not tolerated there. In fact, in the beloved community, Dr. King said the expression of love can be seen in how justice is meted out for all persons, regardless of the color of their skin. So justice becomes a birthright of every individual in our beloved community. Our communities become a place of reconciliation and hope. So the question before us today is just how do we go about creating an ecosystem that supports an equitable and thriving society that benefits all those individuals? To answer that question, I'm really excited to have this distinguished panel of guests, community leaders, to join us in this discussion. And I want to extend my sincere gratitude to each of you for taking time to be a part of this conversation. And to share with us your perspectives and insights in this conversation. Before we let them introduce themselves, I want to do a few reminders. In our first session, we talked about the lives of Black and brown people and how that all people of color, all their lives matter, especially those for Black and brown people. And so I'm not here to justify the phrase Black Lives Matter. What I do want to remind you of is that Black Lives Matter is about addressing systems of power and oppression that have disproportionately affected people of color. It's about having these difficult conversations where we acknowledge how our silence and our inaction have contributed to the system of oppression and created inequity for Black people in particular. It's about holding ourselves first accountable to develop an understanding of the issues at hand and to work within our spheres of influence, whatever they look like, whether that's in our workplaces, our churches, our communities, our civic clubs, to hold ourselves accountable, to hold others accountable, our families accountable, so that we can truly develop individually and collectively and address this America's original sin of racism with the mindset and skills necessary to transform our city into that beloved community. So with that in mind, we acknowledge the reality of racism, and the impact that it has on our communities, the detrimental impact that it has on our communities. By doing so, we also acknowledge that racist policies and practices create inequity. So our discussions tonight are predicated on the belief that we must be willing to shift our mindset and shift our practices from what we've always been doing or have done, and be willing to see and hear people for who they are and engage in the work that brings positive change to our communities. So we re-emphasize our shared values of justice, community, opportunity, and equity. And our goal is to build a bridge to a shared understanding. Tonight, we ask that we focus on building a common ground for solutions for our city going forward. So to do that, we ask you to use your head to listen actively and attentively, to be open to building your understanding, to use your heart to take responsibility for the quality of the discussion, to be respectful and not to monopolize the discussion, and to use your hands to commit to action, to doing the hard work of moving forward. We want to be action-oriented and future-focused. Panelists have all been given a list of questions before tonight and asked to review those questions. And so the rules are 3 minutes, hopefully, to respond to each of the questions. And of course, as we said before, if you had any questions or concerns about any particular question, to let me know, and we would talk through that. But we did not have anyone who said they were uncomfortable with any of the questions, so we will proceed. So at this time, we're going to open it up to our panel and start with our first question. And this is a question for everyone. I would like for you to introduce yourself, introduce who you are, your first and last name, what you love about Benton, and why this issue of understanding racism and its impact on our community is important to you, and why it's important for our community to engage in these type of dialogues, whatever part of that question you want to answer. So we'll start with Aaron.
Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Calvin. I'm from Benton, Arkansas, currently residing in Fort Worth, Texas. What I love about Benton, though, is Benton is home. It's always been home for me. It always will be home for me. I've had a relatively pleasant experience growing up in Benton. And I just, from teachers I've had over the years, the coaches, the people I've grown to know and love, I just love everything about Benton. I wouldn't be the man I am today without my beloved community in Benton, Arkansas. And one of the reasons why this dialogue is so important to me, I feel as though it's something that I have been involved in doing for quite some time, even in grade school. I feel like my class and the class below me were one of the first groups to kind of like really try to bridge the gap and to show that we're all the same and we want the same opportunities as everyone else. And so that's why conversations like this and dialogues like this are very important to me.
Thank you, Aaron. Next is Judge Robert Hurstville. Still muted. Let's see.
You'd think I'd know better. I do Zoom all the time. I usually don't mute myself because I don't have to as a judge, but I looks like Mr. Harper is talking to a kid, I hope. All right, so my name is Robert Hurstville. What I love about Benton, I grew up in Benton. My family has been here for different branches, 120 years, 150 years, maybe longer, which, you know, I have been raised up in this community in the First Baptist Church of Benton my whole life. My kids have grown up here. So I just realized when I say my family's been here for a long time, that has baggage too. And I recognize that, and I appreciate Mr. Calvin's comments about growing up in Benton and loving Benton and being comfortable and having teachers that cared about him. And I feel the same way, but his and my experiences inevitably were very different. And one of the things that we have to start talking about is people that had an experience similar to mine have to recognize that we both came through the same town, but we came through different paths, and to recognize that my path was easier, a lot easier. And Mr. Calvin's a successful man and doing well and is well liked. You know, everything I've ever heard about him is great. But it's important for people like me, who look like me and who raise children in this community, and our leaders in the community, to recognize we can't be colorblind. Because to be colorblind is to be blind to the truth and to be blind to history. And you can't really understand or begin to even to show the empathy that we're supposed to show as Christians and as human beings, and to recognize the shoes that person is walking in have gone a harder path than mine. And that doesn't mean, well, it means a lot. Actually, I can't say it doesn't mean anything. It means a ton. And we have to recognize that and share that with other folks. And I've always thought, I don't want to take too much time, but I've always thought that I was a pretty progressive person, you know, had a variety of friends from a variety of backgrounds, gone to school all over the country. But I've learned so much in the past 4 or 5 years, and in the last few years particularly, having, and even coming from a background in the law and in law enforcement, how much I've seen that upset me. And I've seen the world a little bit more through a different set of eyes, through, you know, thanks to phones and cameras. And that has woken me up. And I try to share that with my friends and my family and talk about it. And I'm not alone in learning these new things. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and talk and listen. And having said that, I'm going to start listening.
Thank you, Judge Hirschfeld. And I think those are great points about listening to the experiences of others. Thank you so much. Mayor Farmer.
Hi, I'm Tom Farmer. Unlike the other two, I didn't grow up necessarily from kindergarten to Benton. I do feel like I was raised in Benton. I came here at 22 coaching and teaching. And so I feel like the community of Benton is a loving, caring community, one that puts others first. Now, then I do recognize that in every community, there's work to be done. Throughout the nation, there are wounds to be healed, and especially today. In every heart, there's power to do so. But all has to start within one's individual heart. Kind of like Judge Hirschfeld said, you know, as Christians, we're asked to love one another. It has nothing to do with race or anything else. It has to do, I kind of related, we had diversity training here yesterday for all the department heads. And the gentleman that presented the thing, I thought did an outstanding job of talking about the iceberg theory. And the iceberg theory is simply one that 10% of an iceberg is above the water and 90% is below the water. You can look and see what's above the water, but you can't see what's below the water. And that 90% is what we have to focus on with everyone. It's not the 10% that we see, but it's 90%, their heart, their will, their soul, the things that truly make them up is what's important.
Thank you, Mayor Farmer. Randy Morris, please introduce yourself. Tell us what you love about Benton and why this issue of understanding racism and its impact on our community is important to you.
Hey, well, hello, guys. I'm Randy Morris. I, like Mr. Farmer, Mayor Farmer, I didn't grow up here in Benton. I grew up in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. But what I love about Benton is the way they've opened their arms to me. I work in Benton now, the CEO of Central Arkansas Development Council. The reason why race, the dialogue about race is so important to me, and I guess I could say it's somewhat selfish, but it's not. It's my children, plain and simple. I have a 24-year-old and I have a 12-year-old, and I want them to grow up in the best world they can grow up in. And it's important to me that that we start here and we start doing things better so that they don't have to go through some of the things that I've gone through, or some of the other individuals in my family have gone through. So plain and simple.
Thank you. Joe Winters, welcome.
You. I'm Joel Winters, and I also didn't grow up here in Benton. I grew up in North Little Rock, Arkansas, and moved to Houston, Texas for a little while, and now I live here in Benton, and glad to be here. I love the sense of community and the small town, especially coming from Houston. You know, it's a lot smaller than Houston. I love that. You know, I love the way that feels, and I do like that sense of community that you get. The reason that this issue and understanding racism and its impact is important to me is because I believe that racism is a gospel issue, and my faith informs my beliefs on this. Galatians says that we're called to freedom. We're not to use our freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but rather serve one another in love. And it says that the entire law is summed up in this, that we should love our neighbors as ourselves. I'm not here to preach, but you know, I've come to a place of understanding that the walls of my biases, they're still intact, but being broken down. They're being broken down by this God of love who made us in his image. And I know that he loves me because he loves me enough to have started to turn my heart toward the work and task of creating equity for people of color in our community, which is something that I'm thankful for. But I guess that's my answer to why it's important, because it's important to God, and because of that, it's important to each one of us made in his image.
Thank you. Veronica Jackson, also co-facilitating the discussion.
Hi, I'm Veronica Jackson. I have never lived in Benton. However, I used to live on the outskirts in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And so I traveled through Benton on numerous occasions. The reason I think this conversation is important is simply what Robin said in the beginning, just building the bridge of understanding. I think there's so many things that we don't know, and because we don't know them, we operate in assumptions versus understanding. So that's why I think this conversation is important, and I'm so glad y'all are having it.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Veronica will be moderating any comments that will be shared on our Facebook live stream. So keeping us abreast of any comments or questions there. So thank you for that. Keaton Harper is next. Welcome.
Hey, Robin, thank you so much. And thank you to Ms. Veronica for hosting this and the other discussion. It's been really, really awesome to get to see and now be a part of this discussion. And I think that we owe you guys a big thank you. So we appreciate it very much. I am Keaton Harper, and very observant of you, Judge Hertzfield. I am a husband to an amazing wife and father to 4 children, not all the same skin complexion as mine, and yes, all requiring redirecting more often than I'd like to admit, but that's okay. I love Benton. I did not grow up here. I grew up in Hope, Arkansas, which is quite a bit different than Benton, and we may get into some talking points as to why that's influenced my understanding and upbringing specifically, maybe as we go through this discussion. But what I love about Benton is there are a ton of people I know from here that have been born and raised in Benton, and there's a hometown pride that comes along with that that's really, really neat for me to see. While at the same time, my family has lived here for 10 years and we have never felt anything but accepted into this community, which I think is a really neat balance to strike. Being so proud of your hometown and yet inviting gives me hope for other opportunities of being proud and yet inviting of others. The issue of racism and understanding it better is important to me for this community because, like I said, I've lived here for 10 years, but I still feel like there's some understanding for me to be had. Some nuances, whether it's historical or historically those things influencing our present. I just think there's a lot for me to still learn about where we stand on the issue of racism, and then where are we going. It's also important to me, like Joel mentioned, I think it is a gospel issue, and I think we see accounts in the scripture of people who have made racist mistakes. Peter comes to mind, and yet we see he was transformed by the gospel, following Jesus, still messed up, and yet that transformation was a process that he was able to change his heart and behavior. And that gives me hope for us, that if Peter can do that, then we can too. So that's something I look forward to coming out of this dialogue, especially since it continues with action, which I'm looking forward to most. So.
Thank you, Keaton. Good to have you. Next is Miss Ovita Pledger. Welcome.
Oh, it's my turn.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. My name is Ovita Pledger, and I was born in Benton, and I was raised in the Raft Bunch community. And I'm glad we're having this discussion today, because me myself, I've experienced racism during school, before I left here and moved away, and I've experienced it since I've been back. But one of the things that I had said, that I would never move back to Benton when I left here, and if I moved back to Arkansas, it wouldn't be Benton, because of instances, the trials that I've been through on both sides of the tracks. So God made a lie out of that. And when my father passed, I moved back to the Raft Bunch community to take care of the house. And one thing that I do like about Benton since I moved back is I found my purpose here, which for 18 years been doing the Raft Bunch Back to School picnic, which has been determined as one of the biggest events that help bridge the gap between both sides coming together for a common cause. So I'm just happy to be here, and thank you, Robin, for inviting me, and I will enjoy being in on this discussion so we can hear each other's viewpoints.
It's good to have you, Ovita. Thank you so much for being with us. Shannon Winston is next. Good evening and welcome.
Hello, Miss Robin and everyone else. As she said, my name is Shannon Winston. I've been in Benton all my life, born and raised here. What I love about Benton, I love the small town, and that pretty much everyone knows everyone. You know, you're always going to come in contact with someone that knows someone. So I like that, because, you know, if something happens, someone knows why or who did or whatnot. So I like that about Benton. Dialogue is important to me because of children. It just makes me think about children. I have my own children that I think about, but I just have a heart for children in general. And our children, it's time for, like Aaron said, to bridge the gap, because our children need to have some of the same opportunities that other children have. And so that's why this is important to me, because I want to see, like my children, there's been times where my girls have made really good grades and should have had different things happen for them because it happened for another kid, and it didn't happen. It wasn't recognized, and I had to go and say, hey, what happened here? You know, and they tried to say it was a mistake, but it wasn't. So it's things like that. I want children to have the same opportunities that other children have. So that's why this is important too.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you for sharing that. And Miss Regina Carr is next. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Regina Carr, and I've never lived in Benton. I work in Benton. I've been here for 3 years, and I have heard so much about the school district. And a lot of one of my relatives moved here because of the school district and the school system. What I'd like to see that we discuss is, like I said, I've been here for 3 years at the DHS office, and I've seen different things, you know, because of the fact that I'm the county administrator, and they weren't expecting me to be African American. And so once we did that and I started getting involved with the community, that was the first thing that happened. I was invited by Miss Linda to attend certain things. And now that I've done a lot of things with the community, with the different coalitions and being members of it, I see the joining of the different races and the support.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Ms. Terry Todd, welcome, and thank you for being on this panel tonight.
Thank you, Robin, for having me, and also to the fellow panelists. I'm just excited to be here. I have never lived in Benton. I actually live in Otter Creek and know several people from Benton, play a lot of tennis with them. But what I love about Benton is I am part of an organization that had done some research to establish a new chapter of our sorority in a place in Arkansas where we felt like people who looked like us was needed, and that the service we provide was needed. And so we did some research and found out that the African American population in Benton has tripled in the past 20 years. But some of the equitable pieces, like in the school districts, there's not a lot of folks that may look like us for the kids that are in the school district. So we did our research and we put in our application. And so our group is part of the Catalyst for Change in Saline County and providing that service. And so it's important to us and to me that this dialogue happens because we want to be those change agents. We want to have that transformation and roll up our sleeves and be a part of the solution because we know that those things exist. I think it was Adam, is that his name, that was from Hope? I'm from Prescott. And he talked about how he grew up. We couldn't swim at the pool in Prescott because it was restricted, but it was called a membership. And we would always swim in Hope because the pool there, we could swim in Hope. So those are the kind of things that I hope the awareness brings about. And we are going to listen and we are going to share and we are going to grow as a community because of it.
Thank you. I think that was Keaton that shared he was from Hope.
Yes, Keaton. Yes.
Yes. Yes. That's a great point. Thank you so much. I'm missing one person that I haven't gotten to yet. I'm not sure who that is, tell you the truth. It's a 501 number, 443. Hello. Hello, witness. So we'll go on with our first question. And the first one I'm gonna throw out to Randy Morris. And let's start with Black Lives Matter. And the question is, how has awareness and understand of Black Lives Matter, in particular, the value statement, not the organization, and All Lives Matter impacted you? When you hear Black Lives Matter and then you hear All Lives Matter, what impact does that have on you in particular?
Well, basically what it has on me, and I guess I can be a little selfish again, because I would like for people to understand that when we say Black Lives Matter, we're not saying that all lives don't matter. It's basically saying that the plight and the things that we have went through, we want you guys to understand what we're going through. We want you guys to understand that we want change. We want you guys to understand that we shouldn't have to go through the things that we go through. Some of the Black and brown communities that we do go through. And to hear all lives matter, yes, all lives do matter. But when I tell you that my house is on fire and my neighbor's house isn't on fire, I want you to come help me put my fire out. Not my neighbor's, because he doesn't have a fire going on in his house. I need you to help me with my house. So that's how it impacts me. That's my thoughts about it. And I don't want to ever be quoted to say that all lives don't matter, because they do. But right now, what we're talking about, what we're going through as a community, as Black and brown individuals, our houses are on fire. We're going through a lot of things, and we need help for you guys, from other individuals, from other races, to understand that we're not asking for more, we're just asking for equal.
Thank you so much. Our houses are on fire. Yes. Regina, can you add to that? Can you address that? How does that phrase impact you when you hear those conflicting statements? Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. You don't have to unmute.
The same as Mr. Randy said about Black Lives Matter, and it's all about all lives matter. But things that have been going on lately, and the things that have been out on social media and things like that, those are the things that we're seeing. Several injustices that are going on, and it's a statement that all lives matter and that Black lives matter. But it's beginning to look like, in some cases and in some areas and in some states and some cities, that it doesn't. So it's important to me that all lives matter, but it's very important to me that Black lives matter as well. I have 2 daughters. I don't have any male sons, and I have nephews, and I have cousins, and I would like for them to be as safe as the next person if they go out, if they have a particular car. Don't judge them by the car that they have. They might have worked hard for that car. Don't judge them by the neighborhood that they moved in. They worked to get in that neighborhood. So those things matter to me, that if I live in this neighborhood, welcome me just like you would welcome the next neighbor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I kind of want to stay in this kind of theme and kind of piggyback on what Regina has talked about earlier and what Ovita has talked about earlier about examples of racism. And if you don't mind sharing, Ovita, some of your personal journey or story about how racism has impacted your life, because I think that's pretty relevant to that whole conversation of why Black Lives Matter.
Right. Before I say that, a simple way to put Black Lives Matter is from the viewpoint that Black lives are in the spotlight right now, and it's with the feeling that all lives don't matter until Black lives matter, and then and only then will all lives matter. And from elementary school on up, my mom had to come over to the school to get with the principal or with the teacher about things that were said to us, as because we integrated. They were integrated when I went to the first grade at Howard Perrin, and my mom loved to wear her hair blonde, and one of my brother George's teachers made a comment about Mom Tara and asked him, was she trying to be white? Like white people are the only ones that wear blonde hair. And when I got in the 8th grade, you know, I made all A's and B's, and I received a letter. This is something like what Shannon was talking about. I received a letter that I had qualified for honor society, but I didn't get chosen. So that really affected me because long as I didn't I had the attitude, as long as I didn't bring an F home and get killed by my parents, long as I just, did mediocre, because this was telling me that my best is not good enough to me as a child. And I can tell you, during high school, you would think homecoming would be one of the joyous moments of your life, of my life, that week. And I couldn't wait till that week was over with, because during that time, in homecoming, the pep rally, every bridesmaid and the queen had 2 escorts. And because we only had one black senior on the team, I was the only one who had one escort, and it was a big deal. Even on this side of the track, everybody black stopped talking to me because I got homecoming, and on the other side, we got this racial stuff going on. Then in psychology class, the only black teacher at Benton High School uh, signaled me out, put me on the hot spot, asking me how do I feel about this, and it just became a walk of shame for me until that Friday night when my dad walked with me just like everybody else did and made me feel, equal. And as I've been back working on the back of school picnic and having fundraisers at a restaurant, Moe's, and we were taking up donations and stuff, and I had approached the white man, and he said, "I'm not donating no money to them black kids," which little did he know it's all walks of life that come to get help. But he didn't know that. All he thought was that he was helping black kids, and it was really, heartening to know that. I mean, to hear that, and this I've even got pulled over about 5 years ago coming from from Bryant to Benton with my client, which was a white lady. And I was coming through Boxside, and police and another truck were conversating. He didn't really see me, but I seen him. But I know somebody seen that it was a black person driving with a white woman in there. And at the time, I had dreads, a little twist that looked like dreads. And after he ran my name and stuff, that 65 in a school zone, uh, all of a sudden disappeared. So that let me know that you really want to see who was in my car, who was in the car, and he didn't want to see my registrations or insurance because I was fumbling around with it. I'm on the clock. And he said, "Well, just give me your license and let me run it." And when he came back, everything just magically disappeared. And I know for a fact, if I was doing 65 in a school zone, I should have been up under the jail for child endangerment. But a lot of things that I should have spoke up from. It might have helped somebody else, to go through these instances. Or Mr. Hammer asked me, did he want me to speak to the people in Boxside? And I told him no, which I should have said yes, because I rode through there Monday through Friday, and I didn't want no, hassle. But anyway, those are some of the things that stuck out to me when I was all the way when I was a child, um, to moving back to high school and moving back here. It's a lot of things changed here, and
Let me,
I try to make a difference.
thank you, Ovita. I want to go to Erin next and kind of what Ovita touched on about Ralph Bunche community, since you're a product of the Ralph Bunche community, and especially the perception of Ralph Bunche and racism. If you can talk about how that has shaped your perspective and how that's impacted you.
Right. So growing up, going to a predominantly white school, we would hear things like, "Oh, it's scary coming from the hill," or "How do you live on the hill with all this stuff that goes on over there?" I can recall several times trying to order pizza, with some friends and being denied that. Once they got our address, they took the order and things, but the moment they got our address, they're like, "Oh, we don't deliver to that area."
We don't go over there.
And so let me backtrack and say I've been afforded unique opportunities that most in our community, they're not afforded those same privileges, the same opportunities. And so I kind of lived like, I straddled the fence a lot growing up, because I did go to a predominantly white school. I played baseball, which a lot of, at the time, kids my age were not participating in. And so there was times I would get teased at home in the community for being or acting white or being white, but then I was too black among my white peers. And so I can recall times of literally coming home crying and my mom asking me what's wrong. And I remember one day in particular, there was a girl that I was interested in who I talked to all the time, had met her parents, talked to her grandfather when he would come pick her up from school. And, so we really had a strong relationship or a strong friendship, wanted to date her. And she's like, I could never date you. My parents won't allow that. And that was a reoccurring thing throughout high school and throughout my time in Benton. I was good enough to play ball and to, I was celebrated for the things I could do on the field and even in the classroom, being captain of the football team and student council president and stuff. But I just wasn't good enough to date their daughters and things like that. I can recall being denied. A good friend of mine asked me to go to prom with her, and her parents wouldn't allow that to happen. And then another of my senior year, I was dating a young lady, and we had to keep our relationship secret because her parents didn't approve. And so I ended up having to come home early from my prom, my senior night, to make sure she got home at a certain time because her parents were under the impression that we were just friends. And we had been dating almost a year at that point. So I've dealt with it. Like I said, growing up in the community, like I said, it's just been really challenging. And I think a lot of people see the success, or some people claim that I'm successful. I'm still under construction, got a lot of growing up to do. But I really recently got into a little discussion with someone on Facebook because they claimed that I didn't have anything to complain about. They're like, well, you have a great job, you're well liked and all these other things. What's your complaint? I'm like, you still don't know the struggle I've had to deal with. Like I said, not knowing, there was times, I wouldn't call it racism, but discrimination, I guess, on my side from my people within our community. And then for acting white or being around white people all the time. And then on the other flip side, coming from school, being amongst my white peers, I was still too black to fit in there. And like I said, so I wrestled with that for quite a while. And I remember telling my mom that my life would be better if I was white. And I think I was in the 6th grade when I said that. And we had a long talk about being proud of who you are as a black man and never being ashamed of your heritage, your roots, your upbringing, and any of that stuff. And so from that moment on, I made a conscious effort, even at a young age, to show everybody that we all can get along and we all can, like I said, bridge the gap. It doesn't have to be, acknowledge our differences, but there's beauty in our differences. But at the end of the day, if we just take time to get to know one another, we can see that we have a lot more similarities than we do have differences. And so, yeah, I'm just very passionate about that, about this whole dialogue in general. A few years ago, Brother Keaton and I sat in a class on racial reconciliation at Holland Chapel, and we had great dialogue, great discussions. And so I'm encouraged by the fact that we're having this conference right now, but I'm also a little bit sad, to be honest with you, because like I said, that conversation was 5 years ago, and we're still dealing with the same issues and the same problems 5 years later, and it's at one point, when is enough, when can you just see me for who I am as a person as opposed to what I look like? And so I'm loving this dialogue. I'm loving these discussions, but I'll be honest, I've been discouraged a little bit lately because when I think of Black Lives Matter, I think I matter. I think about what if I tried to commit suicide during the time I was wrestling with my identity or who I was trying to fit in with or whatnot. So when I hear people try to combat Black Lives Matter by saying all lives matter or blue lives matter or whatever the case may be, yes, all lives do matter, like I said. But in our Constitution, we say all men were created equal. So if we're all equal, you shouldn't have a problem with uttering the words Black Lives Matter. It shouldn't offend you if you really believe that statement that all lives matter. And thinking about the future, like I said, going forward, these kids need to know that they matter, that they are important, that they can become anything that they want to be, no matter where we come from. sky's the limits, you know. And again, to me, I have nothing but positive reviews about Ralph Bunche community. Like I said, it's had some negative stigmas and things said about it over the years, but it's always been love and home for me. And I wish more people could see the joy that we really do. We haven't been without faults in our ups and downs, but the sense of community is really strong there. And I wish people from the other side of the tracks could understand that we really are just family, and we really just enjoy life and want to do life amongst each other, you know. And so that's why I'm very passionate about this, and that's why I've been going to a couple protests here in Fort Worth. And a friend of mine from high school, she's making a name for herself in Hollywood. We just filmed a documentary a couple weeks ago on these same topics. And so hopefully PBS picks it up and we'll be able to share that as well in the upcoming weeks. But again, I think my time is up, so I'm gonna be quiet now. But just to go back to what you said, Black Lives Matter. When I hear Black Lives Matter, to me, it makes me feel like I matter. Because there was a time in my life where I didn't think I mattered because I didn't know which side I fit in or which group I fit in with. And so that's what resonates with me anytime I hear that statement, Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Aaron. You referenced Keaton earlier in your comments about the racial reconciliation. And Keaton, you said earlier that you had kind of a shock or a little different from your transfer here from Hope to Benton. And can you talk about that and maybe the disparity of what your experience was like and how that relates to racism, equity, or discrimination?
Sure. So, yeah, I grew up in Hope, and for the purpose of this discussion, I looked up and found out statistically confirmed what I thought to be true. The census done not long after I graduated high school showed that Hope had a population of 34% white, 43% Black, 21% Hispanic, and then 2% other ethnicities. And so I grew up with a lot more, I don't know that I would say more diversity as far as more ethnic groups, like just more ethnic groups represented, but there was more representation, especially of the Black community and seemingly of the Hispanic community as well, which is difficult for me now. My son is Hispanic, specifically Mexican. His parents are one of them's a first generation Mexican American. And so, yeah, it was very strange to move to this community. And I still don't think I've reconciled how much of my memory growing up is just being naive and a child versus how much is just that different. So a couple of things there. Like, for instance, one of the questions on this talked about common mistakes or ideas of racial identity. I immediately go to stereotypes. For us, in the locker room, in the classroom, when the teacher wasn't necessarily doing the best job keeping us on task, which happened a lot, we thought it was fun to poke fun at stereotypes, whether they were being made light of because people were breaking them or because people were fulfilling them, and that went for everyone. And so that was strange to me, to come to a community where I felt like that was probably insensitive. And because that transition for me geographically was coupled with a transition from not exactly, but basically a transition from childhood to adulthood, it was hard for me to determine what's permissible, what is not, and what's even better than permissible, but like really acceptable. So yeah, it was just a culture shock, and so I'm hopeful that through this discussion I can learn even more because 10 years isn't that long to be in a community. And I just want more enlightenment, more understanding. I want conversations like this to do what you've said, Ms. Robin, to leave us with opportunity to take action, because it is saddening to think, man, we've had these discussions before and nothing seems to come of it. Like, where is the rubber going to meet the road? And I'll take blame for that. And I think that we all need to take that up as a responsibility. And so I'm encouraged that that's part of what I would call a smart action plan that you have in place to follow up these discussions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Keaton. And just to kind of go from there, that action and something you referenced earlier, Terry Todd, in your comments, you mentioned some statistics about the population of African-American community. I think you said doubled in the last 10 years.
Tripled in the last 20 years. It's almost tripled in the last 20 years.
So, and you also spoke some about statistics as far as in the school and the lack of educators who represent people of color who stand in front of the classroom. At over 300 to 400 educators in our Benton School District, and we have, I think to date, less than 10 educators of color in the classroom. So tell us a little bit more about what you see the role of organizations like the one that you're leading in making our communities equitable for all individuals.
Thanks, Robin. And some of the other statistics that we also noticed was the health disparities that, and it kind of matched up with the national health disparities about these different common illnesses that are treatable, but our folks are getting treated less frequently or getting looked over or not having access to those services. Even though the population is increasing, those statistics are not meeting that same level. So it's important to remember that the touchstone of the community was the school, the church. My mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother always talked about that. When somebody in the community needed something, they always went to the church or to your teacher first. And I think it's important for organizations to realize that we are the mobilization piece, that if we're going to talk the talk, we have to walk the walk too. And so it's good to have these meetings. It's good to talk about the change. It's good to say, you know, somebody needs to speak up when these things are going on. But also it's about, you know, rolling your sleeves up, getting your boots on the ground work, and organizing where people are actually, well, they can't now because of COVID, but in a normal way, where we're embracing that difference and we're recognizing that a lot of these things historically have happened because of racist policies. So it's been a policy in place to keep someone down. And, you know, you hear the phrase a lot of the times, you know, they just got to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Well, you know, sometimes people don't even have on boots, you know. So it's about recognizing that, getting folks those boots, and then helping those folks get to where the starting line is the same for everyone. And so I think it's incumbent, it's a challenge to the organizations that is what we need to do. Embrace that difference, recognize that difference, be the change that the community needs, and fill in those gaps, because that's where it's going to come from.
Thank you, Terry. And I'll go to Joel next because I know he mentioned his passion for that this is driven by your faith. And so I'm really interested in hearing your perspectives of, in terms of that boots on the ground and putting this into action. What is the role of the church? Does it begin and end with just loving your neighbor as yourself? Is there something more that we as a church should be doing?
I think for the church, I think one of the first places we do have to start is educating our people. And I think that, you know, pastors and churches have to be teaching and preaching that racism is sin and that it's a problem, you know, and it has to be dealt with. It's evil. I think it has to be acknowledged in predominantly white churches that that it's not just an issue that's outside, you know, it's part of many of our congregations. But I know that if I just stayed there and that's all I said, that would sound pretty lofty and easy just to kind of leave it there. Like kind of, as you said, I think though, we don't need to just turn our backs on the idea that hearts can change. I do believe that that within the church, the hearts of people can be changed, and that they can start to truly love others the way that Jesus loves them, and see people the way that Jesus sees them. And when we do that as a church, then change can really start happening. And Robin, you and I were talking a couple weeks ago about some of this, but you know, I think churches in general do probably a pretty good job of doing the events, you know, the helpful events, showing up to clean up a park or repaint something or passing out backpacks, you know, these kinds of things, good things that don't need to go away, good things we need to keep doing. But I think churches need to link arms with the community and truly build relationships. I mean, I think maybe a one way a church like mine could do that is you know, our church is a predominantly white church. I'm at First Baptist here in Benton. Could we link arms with a predominantly Black church and build true community together and do something together to impact the community? And I think also for in doing that, I think it's good for the predominantly white churches, our leadership, to just come alongside and say, hey, we don't have to be in charge either. And I think you see that a lot of times is like, okay, we're here, so we're going to take over. You guys just do what we're doing. But like, what if we showed up and don't try to control the situation, because we don't know what all the needs are, but we can listen and learn, and then and come alongside and support leadership of churches of other ethnicities, you know. And so I think that's where real change would start to happen, is if churches worked together in the community long term to truly meet needs and build unity. So that's some of my thoughts on that.
Thank you so much. I've come to Mayor Farmer. He made a comment in the chat about how he was touched by some of the comments that have been made. So do you want to talk a little bit about how this issue has impacted you and what you would see going forward, things that can be done to address the issue, or whether it's government working on some of these issues to address inequity?
If I might, I want to first say to Aaron and Randy, thank you so much for sharing, because while you were talking, my heart was hurting. I, for some reason, I could just grasp what you were saying and how you grew up. And I'm sorry you had to face those, and sorry you had to do, but I appreciate the man you are today, that you overcome these issues. I'm truly sorry that anyone in this society, I guess, I've been living in a world where I thought everything was rosy and everything was fine, but being in athletics, I never really saw these things. So I want to touch on what Joel said about the church for just a minute. Since I am a member of Joel's church, I do think that one of the things churches have to do is start teaching true love. And, you know, churches do a good job of going and giving to what they think is needed instead of teaching what true love is. True love is what I like to call greeting for success. You know, and I'm going to explain it like this, and I'm probably going to run over, and I'm sorry, beat me out like they do on a show or whatever, but when you pull up on a car lot, that car salesman comes out, he's got a smile on his face, he's got his hand out, He wants to know what he can do to help, how he can get involved, what can he do for you to make it better that day. And that's what churches need to start teaching. Instead of saying, we got to do this, this, and this, they need to teach people how to greet for success. And when you greet for success, you truly have a smile on your face and you're excited about the opportunity to talk to whoever's in front of you. You stick your hand out with the thing that, hey, what can I do? How can I help? What can I do to make your life better today? And I think that's where one thing that churches have got to start doing is start teaching people how to greet for success instead of just having that fake smile on their face. We need to teach people how to truly care. Because as I listened to Randy and Aaron talk, my gosh, my heart was just hurt listening to the things that they've gone to. And what Randy said about my house is on fire and we need some help putting it out. It's time to really put our feet to the ground and start doing some things instead of just giving it lip service.
Thank you. Yeah, Judge Hertzfeld.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of piggyback on that. I was impressed with not just the things the gentleman had to say, but also that Ms. Pleasure had to say. And I recognize it's a lot to keep up with, and it's overwhelming. But as far as the language, I was an English major in college, and you know, Black Lives Matter. That phrase has become politicized, frankly, by people who want to cause conflict and chaos, not folks who are saying Black Lives Matter. But I hear now that because I try hard to pay attention and try hard to listen, what folks who say Black Lives Matter, I believe, mean is Black Lives Matter too, and not more, but two. And that's a pretty low bar. All folks are asking who say this is treat us with dignity and respect and humanity, just like you would treat that white kid. And if you say, as a question, do Black Lives Matter? Well, there is no answer but the right answer, of course, or yes. But when, you know, folks who have an agenda to divide and to cause problems and to make people question, you know, most people outside of the politicized context of the question 5 years ago or whenever it began, before it began or in the beginning of when it was began talked about, if you said, do Black Lives Matter, everybody would say yes. Even people who might have not been as broad-minded as we would all want them to be would at least say the right thing. But now, I mean, there's not another side. If you are a human being who has a heart and empathy, there's not another side to do Black Lives Matter. There's no response to that other than, yeah. And what can I do to help? If the response that somebody has been programmed is no, XYZ, other thing, Blue Lives Matter, all lives, that's not the point. The point is that Black folks and brown folks and people who have a different experience than I have deserve at least humanity and dignity and respect. And if you think about it from that perspective, why would you even have to say that? Because they have not received dignity and respect and the humanity that they deserve as human beings on this earth, that we are commanded. Somebody said a while ago, we were told to love, we were encouraged to love, we were commanded by Jesus Christ to love one another. And that love doesn't just mean a paternal love, it means a respect and a philos, a brotherly love. And we need to do better. And we need to teach our children, teach our friends. And when white folks are gathered and somebody says an off-color things, we need to shut them down. That is not okay. And government has a responsibility and a legal obligation to treat everybody equally. I try really hard in the courtroom to treat everybody as if they are as important as anybody who could ever walk in there. And we're not lowering the bar, not treating, you know, the rich guy in the suit worse than he ought to be treated, but I need to treat everybody like they're the governor. call them by their last name, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Johnson, and treat them with dignity and with whatever kind of case it is, because we are all in this together. And once you get a taste of that victory in your own heart, you don't want anything else. So,
great, thank you so much. Great comments, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing. I don't know that I asked Shannon a particular question, so I'm going to come to her and ask, what do you think are some of the commonly mistaken ideas that people of other racial identity groups make about your racial identity group? So what would you like for people who are not Black to know about you? What are mistakes or stereotypes that you often face as
I'm not a criminal. I vote. And I say that because I believe it was last year? Maybe last year or the year before, I can't remember. But someone was I was up by the courthouse. I can't remember what was going on exactly, but I was in a group with some of my white friends, and a guy came up. He was campaigning for something, and he addressed everyone white there except me about voting for him, as if I don't vote. And voting is very, very important to me and other brown people or Black people. So we vote. We're not all bad people. We want to be educated. We want our children to be educated. You know, those are things that really they mean a lot to me. And I want my children to know that too. And I don't want my children to go through life thinking, you know, that those things don't matter because someone else has kind of pushed them to think that because of the way they treat them.
Yeah, thank you so much. That kind of goes back to what Aaron said earlier about, you know, having that, not being torn between kind of like two worlds, and how that can impact your perception of your own worth. When you see inequity or people treating you a certain way, that has a mental impact on you. So Aaron, did you want to speak to that?
Just to add real quick, again, I'm not looking for sympathy or things, but you're exactly right, Robin. I still remember to this day being called the fly in the buttermilk because I was on an all-white team. And again, that was years ago. I'm 32 now, and I still remember that was a common joke that was thrown around when I was on the baseball field. The fly in the buttermilk. I will never, ever forget that. I hit a home run. Great job, fly in the buttermilk. Get a triple, great job. You get somebody out. That was, it was a reoccurring theme, and I know they probably didn't think anything of it. I didn't think anything of it back then, to be honest. But that's something that will always stick out to me, always. And one more thing, there was a time I was coming home from college, and my grades. That the first year of school, you can either go either one way or another, but I was really excelling and really proud of myself. And I was coming home one weekend, and I didn't want to tell my mom. I wanted to surprise her. And so I called her. She was at Walmart. So I was like, I'm going to just show up to Walmart and meet her there. And I was going to tell her all this good news, everything I was doing. And as I'm approaching her, I walk past this elderly white lady, and she starts freaking out. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I stopped to ask if she needed help. And she tells me, she looked me directly in my eye and said, "Oh, I thought you stole my purse."
Oh my goodness.
And from that day forward, I was like, no matter what I do, no matter what I accomplish or what I'm trying to accomplish, some people still look at me as just some Black thug or something, And so that's why I've really made it a conscious effort to speak out on our behalf, because I don't want someone else treated like that. I was so emotionally high that day and was just ready to relate all this good news to my mom. And in that instance, my whole world just got shut down. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Really sad to hear that. But thank you for sharing that, because that does truly reflect the experiences of many Black Americans, many people of color in our community as well as in our country. Veronica, any comments? And I guess I do want to ask you a question in particular, you know, after hearing and all three dialogues you've been a part of, are we making headway on this issue?
You are. I wrote down something. I don't know if Erin started crying, but just the fact that it looked like it made me cry. But healing through hearing, right? So most of these stories are stories that have not been heard by some of you. But because you hear them and because you might know a snippet of Aaron's story, you connect to him. And that makes you want to do something different. That's why these types of conversations are important, because if there's a snippet of you connected to the person sharing their story, that might put an imprint on you to do something different, to say something when you overhear the type of comment about the fly and the buttermilk. It takes someone imprinting on you to make your heart want to change and shift in order to shift the narrative and the story that's being told. From your perspective, Benton might have been the greatest place on earth to live, and that's the lens in which you see it. But sometimes we got to put on somebody else's shades and see it from their eyes, see it from their seat. There are questions about what is the government, or what is the city trying to do for Ralph Bunche community? Are there any opportunities for monies to be set aside for that community to lift it up and invest in improving that area? I don't know if you want to leave time to answer those types of questions, but I'll just read whatever you want me to read. And then Erin, someone said you are enough. You're more than enough. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I think that's a good question as we go into solutions and talking about what can be done to level the playing field. And you know, that's the theme of the back to school backpack. And I gave you all a whole list of examples of actions we can take to improve the experiences of people of color in our community. And we know the perceptions Aaron's alluded to, Ovita's talked about it a little bit, the perception of the Ralph Bunche community being the place where all the robbers live. As one of my daughter's childhood friends told me one day as we were driving through, one of her white childhood friends, that's where all the robbers live. And that perception still persists today. And I think we all have stories that we can share that we've heard other people have talked about, other people who don't live in the Ralph Bunche community have talked about why aren't the streets, why are the streets in disrepair? Why are the houses dilapidated? Why aren't there sidewalks? Why is the park not like Tyndall Park? You know, those are the questions that periodically come up for our community. And so what can be done? What are examples that government can take to help level the playing field for communities like Ralph Bunche and other, and just for people of color in general? So we'll start. Who wants to start? That's a new question. Let's go with Mayor Farmer, and then we'll go to Ovita. If you would be mindful of the time. Thank you, Mayor Farmer.
How much time do we have?
3 minutes.
Well, the first thing I see that we got to do is get with the community group over there and see what the community thinks they need.
If you could speak a little bit louder, get a little closer, we can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the first thing we got to do is get with the community leaders over there, because in every area there are community leaders and prioritize what the community leaders feel or representation of what they want in the park or what they want in the streets. You know, because there's 38,000 people in Benton right now, roughly. So we need to hear and react to what we're hearing to. Does that make sense?
You said we need to hear and react to what we're hearing.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Ovita, did you want to piggyback on that?
Yes. a lot of it comes from addressing issues in the community, because if you don't address them and let them be known, and it nothing can be done. Realization is the key. Um, just like Aaron was talking about the pizza incidents with not delivering over here. And I remember I was sick one day and I wanted something to eat, and I called all these pizza places and they said, we don't go over there. And I addressed that with Pizza Hut, and they said that they don't go to Boxside and across Edison. And I told them I could understand not going to Boxside because that's not in Benton, but over Edison, you're signal all the Black people. And so it wasn't nothing done. And they sent me a survey, and I talked so much crap that the big man called me, and I tried to tell him how we're trying to take the Black cloud from over our community, and our park has been, upgraded, and about the back to school picnic. So I asked him when the last time he had an incident, and it had been 6 years, and he said he would readdress it, and end result, they come over here delivering, but they don't go past a certain, boundaries. They don't go into the heart of the community. They'll go up East Street and up Stewart Street. But a lot of things, need to be addressed. And a lot of times we're on the back burners. And if no one speaks up, we'll stay back there.
Agreed. So when we talk about organizations and what they can be doing to bring about change in our community as a whole, making life more equitable for people of color, Keaton, I'll ask you next. What would you suggest would be things that organizations should be and can be doing to address this issue?
Yeah, well, I obviously give the bulk of my thought and attention and intention towards the church organization, just because I'm obviously very involved in it. But I think there's work to be done, and I'm of the opinion that the church should be leading the way. I don't think that anyone should have to wait. We've made big talks towards that with regard to taking care of our foster children in our community, that it shouldn't be the government's job to do that. The church should do it, period, the end. The government shouldn't have had to step in. And I think that's the case for a lot of issues, not excluding this one. I think the church should lead the way. And so I give a lot of thought to that. The biggest thing I think probably is preach it. And I think sometimes people think that is an easy answer to give. But if we are using the platform of our churches to preach the greatest news the history of our planet has ever seen, which is the good news of the gospel of Jesus
Christ,
then, my goodness, what weight do we give the issue of racism by sharing the platform to speak on that? And so we can do a lot better at Holland Chapel, the church I'm a part of, but we have not shrunk back from opening up discussion on hard issues like this. Just in the last couple of months, we've spoken to the issue of racism in our community, not to just bring light to it, but to say, now let's do something about it. And so I think that's a big part of it. Because I don't want, like many of you have said, I don't want my children to grow up experiencing the same pitfalls that mostly my friends did. I haven't had to deal with a lot of issue. Let's just be really honest. And if I'm being totally honest, my son, who is Hispanic, probably won't deal as heavily as our Black brothers and sisters will. That's just from my experience and my guess. Now, people make off-color comments about my son on the regular, but it's just not as bad as what I saw my friends who were Black grow up with, and have heard them be talked about by my own family. And so I don't want that for them. And I think the church can make that happen. And I think whether we do in this time or not. One day, the picture we get in Revelation 7 is going to come as a big shock to the church, because one day we will see that kind of unity, and I would like for us to voluntarily usher that idea of the kingdom in now, and not just wait for Jesus to come back, slap us on the wrist for not having done it.
Agreed. I want us to be Star Trek, Next Generation now. All the races, all aliens of all planets like that on Earth. I'm going to go to Randy next, and tell us where you see organizations like CADC that help low-income individuals be successful. What role do they play in making our world more equitable?
I think we, as an organization, as CADC, Community Action Agency, or any agency that is community driven, we play a big role in making it more equitable, because truly we have to be colorblind. We have to make sure that we're helping individuals on every level. And we can't just simply, and I agree with Brother Joel, and I think his name is Keith. I believe that yes, the church should be leading the way, because we now have to be more accountable. We talk a good game. A lot of times we talk.
Okay, talk.
Meetings. We talk more, but then we don't put our foots to the ground and do what's needed to be done to make sure that we're equitable across all races. It's time to stop talking. It's time to just put your feet to the ground and do what needs to be done. We talk it, but we do need to do what we have to do, because it's time. I'm 45 years old. We've had this conversation many years ago. We've had this conversation a long time ago. It's time for us to build. It's time for us to grow. It's time for us to move forward. We have to hold people accountable. We have to be accountable. One of the things that I've done since I've been at CBC, I moved there, one of the big things that I've done, and one of the big things that I said is we're going to start holding everyone more accountable here, that we do what we need to do. We don't need to talk about it. We need to get out and get in these bushes and beat the bushes and help individuals. So.
Yeah, thank you. I think piggybacking there, we're going to go through and ask everyone this question about what are the first steps that we need to take to get there? What should we, as either as individuals or organizations that we lead, where do we go from here? What action steps need to happen? So I'll come down to Terry, if she'll answer that for us, please.
Sure. And this has been so insightful and so uplifting to be a part of this dialogue. But I think, I can't remember the gentleman who said it, that we need to recognize and acknowledge what has happened. And then we also need to see what those needs are, and then we fill in the gaps with those needs. We actually do the work to bring the folks together to get those things needed. I heard you talking about the houses and the homes in Ralph Bunche, and I've stuck it in the chat, but our group specifically designated Ralph Bunche as our first and initial primary beneficiaries of the work that we're doing. So everything that we do, we are trying to partner with Ralph Bunche and support and uplift that beautiful, beautiful historic community. And I think about those homes that are there, and there's a story behind every home that's there that's dilapidated. It could be a senior citizen that is ill, that doesn't have the money to get somebody to help them get their house in order. They're just trying to make it from day to day with basic needs, keeping the lights on, keeping the gas going, and keeping food going, and getting medication and getting things. So I think there's a story. Every block has that thread woven in with that patchwork of what is happening, and we have to dig deeper. It's not surface level. I think it was Mayor Farmer that said the iceberg effect. It's not surface level, it's deeper. And we have to be willing to go deeper. We have to be willing to knock on doors, be willing to help educate folks, to mobilize folks, and not be afraid to interact together as a unit, as a common unit with a common goal.
Thank you so much. Judge Hertzfeld, would you like to chime in on that?
Well, you know, as a judge, I don't have the executive authority to do stuff, but as far as having been in the community and being involved in, you know, my church and then Habitat for Humanity has been a tremendous asset to our community. I was fortunate to be the founding president of Habitat for Humanity back in 1999, and my wife Carla was the executive director. And there are several homes in the area, including in the Ralph Bunche community, there were Habitat homes. That type of thing, you know, it's hammer and nails, you know, whether you call it boots on the ground or whatever, concrete solutions. But you've got to have, you know, leadership of the community, leadership of the folks on this Zoom conference, and we've got to, you know, get folks motivated to, you know, it's such a hard time right now. You know, I don't even go, I've been to 5 places, specifically 5 places in the last 6 months, whether it's my mother's house or my office or here. So it's hard to put, you know, boots on the ground when, you know, you got to stay 6 feet from each other. Okay. So we all know that, but this is not just a call to action because we're in the midst of a crisis. The crisis has been ongoing for 400, you know, something years, 500 years, right? We're not going to solve it with this Zoom, to be honest, but we're making progress, right? And I know it's been said, but I can't help but say it again. Ms. Freeman, thank you so much for showing the leadership, and Ms. Jackson and others putting this together. Is hard, really hard, and I won't say thankless because I'm literally thanking you, but it's practically thankless. Okay, so thank you. Continuing talking, again, it's if you get, there's so many people that are like, since he kind of said it, I'm going to single myself and Mayor Farmer out. So many people that are like us who are trying to do the best we can and have been trying to do the best we can, trying to, you know, I'm not racist. I'm not mean to people. Everything's fine. I don't see that. If I saw it, I'd stop it. But the world is bigger than us. And these type of events, you know, take the scales from our eyes and let us see. And like I said kind of a while ago, once you've seen it, once you've heard Aaron's story about that lady, she was conditioned her whole life to think he was going to do that. That is a sin and a shame, and shame on all of us who have allowed and seen that happen and not done more. We can't do more. This is the kind of thing that takes it, but we have to talk to our colleagues, our friends, and make an active effort to be the change and to share the change and to share these experiences with others. I mean, that, you know, that's, I cannot comprehend the pain and the anger and the frustration that comes from having to deal with that type of thing every day. I cannot comprehend it. I can acknowledge it. I can try to understand. I can empathize. I have not walked in your shoes, but I care that you have. And that goes a long way. I hope it doesn't go as far as it needs to, but it goes a long way towards motivating me to help my sons see it and listen and know it when you see it. Because when you're walking along, and I know I'm taking a little bit extra time, this is a really good analogy. So I said a while ago, I've had an easy life compared to many folks. That didn't mean I didn't work hard. And it didn't mean that I hadn't, you know, stayed up late, worked hard, you know, made the right connections. But it means that, like, I'm playing the video game. This is a younger person analogy, but it's a good one. I'm playing a video game and it's hard. I'm jumping over pits and I'm fighting dragons, but it's on level 1, right? Aaron starts off on expert level. I'm on beginner level. It's hard, but Aaron started off where I have 2 goblins to fight. He's got 10. And we're still fighting in the same arena, but his challenges are more significant. And I have to know that and not be mad or be, my feelings hurt because I don't get the extra benefit of being a white guy because we're both treated equally. Then it's not even a rational thought, but that's when folks, when you're used to having advantages and the playing field is level, you feel like you're falling behind. And so you got to recognize, man, this is just what's fair. And it's not unfair that I or somebody like me is you know, facing it on expert level. It's unfair that that other person's been doing it their whole life, and their families and their grandparents and their great grandparents, and even and they were facing challenges that none of us can even comprehend. So knowing that and sharing that, it's not the gospel, but it's a part of the gospel. Love one another and really try hard at everything you do to spread that message of we're all in this together, and we have not traveled the same path, and we need to help our brothers and sisters.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ms. Regina Carr, what can we be doing individually, collectively, organizations that we lead to help address this issue of racism and equity in our community?
I think that we need to do more group things, going out and inviting the neighbors like Ralph Bunch. Invite the whole neighborhood to have a forum and talk about what's going on, what is going on in that neighborhood, what those families need. And when you do those things like that, you get an idea of what's going on, as opposed to myself. I've never visited Ralph Bunch neighborhood, but from hearing what went on in the neighborhood, it was a family-oriented neighborhood. Things happen like they would in any other neighborhood, but there was a family. They took care of each other. But it's only in that neighborhood that happened. Nobody on the outside knew about that. They only knew about the bad thing. And I think that organizations need to get together and learn who people are, as opposed to hearing what people are or who they are. And I think that when things are planned and something prevents that particular event from going on, it needs to be redone over. It needs to have another day, as opposed to, that didn't happen and we just forgot about it. Because there's been some events that happened, it rained out, and they were never replanned or never reorganized. And so to me, as a person living in that neighborhood, you're forgetting about me. I wasn't important enough. So I think that organizations need to have an open forum, invite the neighbors and let them tell you what it's like to live there, so that we can understand and do better.
Great. Those dialogues really make a difference, right? To go deeper beneath the surface. Shannon, what are your thoughts on where do we go from here? What steps should we be taking?
Well, like Miss Regina said, you need to start inviting the neighborhood, the people, instead of what I found a lot of times, just like a lot of what has been said, is the church, what the church needs to teach. Yes, the church does need to teach, but it starts with you. It starts at home, and because I mean, a lot of times in order for a person to get to the church, that's just like you didn't get to the church until your mother taught you the church, right? Or your father taught you the church. So it starts with home. So you start teaching, and people need to start teaching their children at home that we're all human, and to be actually genuine about what you're teaching your children, not just because Shannon said, because I sat on this dialogue with Robin or whatever. Don't do that because people can see it. Be genuine about what you're doing and what you're saying. Or even when you come to this community, to Ralph Bunch community, to work, you say you're coming to help. I'm here to help, but be genuine about it. Don't just do it that one day. You say, here's $10, or here I'm working on the backpack for the backpack picnic or whatnot. Be more than just that. Give more than just that time. Be genuine. If I see you at Walmart, don't just look past me, because usually I speak to a person because I'm a genuine person. If I work beside you at the picnic last year, guess what? And I see you the next year, I usually remember faces and I speak, because that's who I am. I'm a genuine person. But to me, if you don't speak back and things of that nature, I don't feel that you're genuine about what you were doing. So I think, like, as I said, it starts at home. It starts with the person being genuine about what they are saying that they're going to do. That's all I
Thank
have right now.
you. Thank you. Let's see, I think I've gotten everyone except Aaron, if I'm not mistaken. Is there, Aaron, did you want to follow up on that?
I'll piggyback on what Ms. Shannon just said. Be intentional, but be genuine, right? And I will say this. Some of the churches, as far as like First Baptist, Brother Rick is just like, he hung the moon to me. Just like, I think the world of that man. Holland Chapel, they've partnered up with us before. Brother Mike Tidwell and Trinity Baptist Church. That we've had others outside of our community that have reached out and partnered up and tried to do things with us. But I will say this, if we're going to be completely transparent, we ourselves need to do a better job as well within our community, showing up to events and things. I can recall a year we did the Martin Luther King cleanup day, and the majority of the people that were cleaning up came from outside the community. And our own people were at home, sleep, or doing whatever. And so we have to be intentional ourselves. We have to look at this thing as a holistic approach, and really from education, from health to economics, we need to start teaching our kids as soon as they start talking. One thing I would love to see in the future is for that community center to be a legit center, and maybe not open 24 hours a day, but I want it to be a resource center that provides, trainings on how to balance a checkbook, how to create a resume, what to say, tools you need in interviews and things like that. When you're trying to submit applications for colleges, like those are things that, like I said, I was afforded to because of my upbringing and the people I knew, but there's a lot of kids within our community that don't have access to these things. And so ideally, in a perfect world, I would love to see our community center become a resource to that nature. But it starts with us too. Like Shannon said, it starts at home. And from home, it goes from that house to the streets, to the next corner, to the next corner. And then hopefully we can bring this thing together and live intentionally, but live in harmony. And hopefully then, once we see that we are better together, which is a theme of the Ralph Bunche community, then hopefully the tensions will become less and less, but we have to do a better job ourselves as well. While we're asking for help and asking for empathy, we have to hold ourselves accountable as well. And I just want to say thank you, Mayor Farmer, for the comment earlier. And thank you, everybody that participated in this discussion. Y'all have really touched my heart tonight. And so I'm just grateful for you all, Miss Robin, for putting this together, Miss Jackson for hosting this. Helping host, I'm overjoyed and overwhelmed with just happiness. So thank you all. I love you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, everyone. I do want to piggyback on the comment you made about the cleanup. And I think we need to consider some of the comments that we talked about earlier about not having more than a surface level relationship with the people who are picking up the trash. And that when that happens continually, that people look at that, people in the community look at that a certain kind of way, that it could be that they're just coming to take it over and they're coming for one day only, and then they're leaving. And we never see them again until the backpack or to the next cleanup. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's a surface level event that happens on the day of service, and that creates a sense of complacency in people. Like, what's the point? Because they're going to come pick up trash and we'll leave. So I think we have to keep in mind the mental perspective of the people who are here, and why it's so important that we continue the dialogues, that we find opportunities to build deeper relationships. Mayor Farmer mentioned about on a couple of weeks there coming up is a prayer event behind Holland Chapel on September, looks like the 20th. So that's an opportunity for people to come together and pray. But after we pray, what's going to happen? What are we going to do different? That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those solutions. Can we do more? Can we go deeper? Yes, let's pray. But you know, some of our grandmothers been praying about this since the 1920s. My mother was in 29 and lived through much of this and prayed through much of this. And yet here we are in 2020 and we're still praying about this. God help,
Right.
God have mercy on us.
Right.
So
And then
I'm
what
asking
about
us
the
to go a
people
little bit
that
deeper.
don't get to the prayer, or don't get to the church? When do you ever reach those people? I mean, because
Outreach.
we have those people in our community and in their community that need to
Don't go
know.
to church.
I mean, they need to. So when do I, as I said, the church is good, but what about the people that hasn't made it to the church yet? When do you reach those people? Because those people can be problems too if they don't know. And a lot of times
Mhm.
people, you know, if they see, let's say,
Left out.
Judge Churchfield, if they see
Yep.
him, you know, if they see him doing, then maybe they'll pick up on like, oh, okay, well, he's doing, so I need to do. And it's not because they seen him do it at the church, you know? So I just want to know, when do prayer is good. I pray, we all pray. But what about past that
Outreach.
What can we
is my
do
question.
more? One of the things that we have coming up in our dialogues, after the dialogues, we have the Be the Bridge discussion group. So if you truly want to go deeper, you can text Janet Dixon at 501-317-6449. And you can sign up for the Be the Bridge small group discussion groups. And that's one way to build relationships. We will have a meeting this coming up Saturday. There's a drive-through voter registration at Ralph Bunch Park from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. on Saturday. And a few of us are going to stick around and talk about some additional relationship building activities that we can do for our city that will take us a little bit deeper. That'll be at 1. So that's 10 to 1, the drive-through voter registration that Terry's group and Alicia Morrison have organized. So we're looking forward to that. There's also a political forum that's coming up next week on Tuesday, I believe. Terry.
Yes, it is next Tuesday, and it is a virtual forum. We have invited all the candidates because part of moving that equity up is education. And so it starts with elections, with your school board, with your justice of the peaces, your alderman, city council, and that's what people need to understand, that voting for those folks is what makes a difference. So our political forum, we have invited all the candidates. We have been hearing from them, and we are excited. We're going to talk about voter absentee ballots, important voter dates. There will be a Q&A session for the candidates, the folks in the community to ask the candidates. And so we really want folks to engage with us on Facebook and ask those questions that affect your community, those street lights, those holes in the street, the city park, those things that you were talking about that I've heard on this discussion. So if you get an opportunity, please join us on our Facebook page, True Reflections of Sisterhood, and we'll have those candidates meet and greet you virtually.
Thank you. And we'll share that information here after we end our discussion. I know we've gone past our time tonight. So I just want to say thank you all again for participating and being a part of the discussion. And please reach out to me. 722-8089 is my phone number. And anyone's welcome to call me and let's talk and chat about where do we go from here. Would love to connect with you. And again, to this distinguished panel, you all rock. Veronica, final closing thoughts. You have such great pearls of wisdom.
Oh, this was great. It sounds like the churches are going to get together and break bread together and share stories and worship together. And then there's going to be a community event at the community center where there's resume tips and writing and resources and services shared. So it sounds like there's a plan. You just pull it all together and great things will be happening in Benton.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, 1 o'clock Saturday. Anyone's welcome to come by Ralph Bunch Park. We'd love to have you. Again, thank you so much. Any final closing thoughts from any of our panels? Don't want to leave anyone. If all minds are clear.
I would like to say to all that equals to outreach. And if anybody noticed or not, in the times that we're living now, God has made it where we don't have any other choice but to outreach and come up with different ways to reach the people instead of sitting in the four walls like a dog chasing his tail, because everybody in the church house pretty much have the same agenda, goal, want to go heaven, see Jesus, but reaching other people that needs to be reached. And during these times, I've realized how many people don't believe in God, so they don't get the memo, you know, about what's going on. So we need more outreach and to come together so we can stand together.
And I'd like to say that I thank you guys for putting this together. Thank you guys for allowing me to be on it. I was kind of skeptical at first, but then Robin told me about Mr. Mayor, Mr. Farmer had said he wanted me on this. So of course I wanted to be on it, but I just want to encourage anybody that's listening, please stop with the stereotypes. Let's have an open heart, an open mind. I'll tell anybody I'm a 6'10" individual. They call me a gentle giant, but please, a lot of people may look at me and think that, oh, he's scary, he's this and that and the other. I'm not. I'm a gentle giant. I come from a home where my father was illiterate, died when I was 12 years old. My mother only had a high school diploma. Wanted me to go to college. I'm the only one out of 10 individuals in our household that was adopted, along with biological brothers and sisters that went to school to get a master's degree, a bachelor's degree. I mean, we live in a society right now where things are kind of scary right now. One of the scariest things that I've heard as of late was my older son, my 24-year-old, and my 12-year-old were going to get some ice cream one night. He got stopped by the police. He called us. And one of the scariest things I had in my mind, going in my mind, was, please God, let my children come home. And to have those conversations with them about making sure you don't reach for anything, making sure you sit, making sure you sit still, making sure you talk to the officers in a nice tone. I shouldn't have to have those conversations, but we do. We live in a society right now where it's necessary, and let's just start holding people accountable for what we go, what we're standing for. One of the things that my mother always said, if you don't stand for something, son, you'll fall for anything. We have to, as a society, stand for something. We have to believe in something. And like I said before, Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that I want more than you. I want equal. I deserve equal, and I demand equal. So we as a society ought to be able to give each other that. So and that's all I wanted to say. I appreciate you guys.
Well said. Thank you so much. Again, thank you all for being on tonight. And
real quick, one thing, can we take a picture? Can I do a screenshot? Every smile? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.